The fantasy playoffs are getting closer and closer. Each move you make is going to matter more and more. What's up, and welcome to the Rival Fantasy Week 10 episode for Risers of the Week. I'm Neil Maligno, and the goal of this episode is to help you add the players that you'll need to win big in Week 10 and for the rest of the season. Now, if you're wondering why a player isn't on this week's episode that you think should be, then it's likely because I've recommended them on prior week's videos. I try not to repeat players over and over. I know it's common in waiver style content, but that's not the goal of these videos. I just want to keep the videos filled with fresh new names. I'm assuming you're in highly competitive leagues where the waivers are active and the common names aren't really always available anyway. Sometimes I reach deep for those of you in leagues where there isn't much talent left in free agency, so we're looking at players who have some upside, or maybe I'm projecting forward on who might get hot. That leads to misses. It happens. It's part of the game when we're not just stating the obvious. Now, I do keep these episodes quick hitting. If you want longer or interactive content, subscribe to the channel, join our weekly live episodes, including our Sunday Start Sit live stream that kicks off at 11:30 a.m. every Sunday. No reason to keep you waiting. Let's go ahead and jump straight into the risers of the week. Now, between the bye week quarterbacks who are out, the injuries, and the matchup versus the Cardinals in Week 10, Taylor Heinicke is worthy of a pickup and start. He won't win you your league, but he's a serviceable starter, and he'll get you through the weeks. He was a top 15 quarterback in Week 9 and should be able to end there again, all things considered, especially if Drake London is a healthy go. If you remember last season, Taylor actually had some pretty decent games for the Commanders, so it's not surprising to see him having success with the Falcons. Now, my next QB is not one that I recommend starting in Week 10, as he still needs to prove more, but he played well when you watch the film, and he really should continue to improve as the season moves along. Raiders quarterback Aiden O'Connell has an offense filled with playmakers, including one of the league's best running backs and wide receivers who could put up points, so why not start him? He's facing off versus the Jets defense, which is one of the league's best, so I'd rather sit O'Connell on this one, but I do understand in some cases you might not have much of a choice, especially in 2 quarterback or super flex leagues. A few QBs that I've mentioned in prior weeks but still may be available in your leagues are Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, and Joshua Dobbs. Keaton Mitchell was the RB5 in Week 9 with 138 rushing yards and 1 touchdown off of 9 carries. 9. Now, I know Gus Edwards has been scoring a crazy amount of touchdowns, and Justice Hill hasn't been bad, but Keaton clearly just played himself into the rotation. I'm sure it'll be more of a hot hand approach, but we saw from Keaton's Week 9 performance that he clearly has no issue being a playmaker with a very limited workload. The Ravens face a tough Browns defense in Week 10, so temper your expectations. Now, my second recommendation at running back is a little bit of wishful thinking for me towards a player that I'm a big fan of, and Antonio Gibson. With 11 total touches in Week 9, Gibson was able to put together 76 yards and got close to running back 15 in PPR scoring. He has more fumbles and touchdowns this season. That is certainly holding him back, and he's not getting a great workload, but he is playing the Seahawks this week, who Keaton Mitchell just ate up on limited carries, so Gibson is flex worthy. Some running backs that I mentioned in prior weeks but may still be available in your leagues: Khalil Herbert, who's returning back from the IR, Chuba Hubbard, and Tajay Spears. Is it really possible to trust 3 wide receivers within the same offense, especially one that's led by a rookie quarterback? When the rookie quarterback that's in question is future Rookie of the Year CJ Stroud, the answer is yes. Now, we can't expect that to keep happening, but while Robert Woods is out with injury, we can expect Brown to keep getting those targets and be flex worthy for you, especially if you're covering for bye weeks or injuries. I held off on making this call because I wanted to be confident in it first, but Khalil Shakur is officially a waiver wire pickup that I'm comfortable recommending. He now has 3 weeks in a row with 4 or more targets. While he hasn't scored a touchdown just yet, he's been producing in fantasy. He's part of a high-power offense with a really good quarterback, and he catches about every single target he receives. Facing off versus the Broncos on Monday Night Football, Shakir is flex play in Week 10. Wide receivers that I mentioned in prior weeks but still may be available in your league: Jahan Dotson, Tank Dell, and Demario Douglas. He's back. Every time Patriots tight end Hunter Henry scores a touchdown, we get a double-digit fantasy points from him. The problem is he hasn't done it since Week 2, so it's been really dry for us and anyone who started him in fantasy up until now. For the 4 weeks prior to Week 9, Henry didn't get more than 3 targets in a game, so in a position as wild as tight end, we welcome Hunter Henry back to Startville for Week 10 versus the Colts. Now, staying with the theme of tight ends being back, Saints tight end Juwan Johnson also made a return to players we care about in fantasy. 5 receptions, 29 yards, and a touchdown, which doesn't seem like much, but it landed Johnson in the top 10 at tight end in Week 9. Now that he's back from injury and the Saints offense is rolling a little better each week, we can add Juwan Johnson to tight end Startville as well in Week 10 versus the Vikings. Tight ends that I mentioned in prior weeks who may still be available in your leagues: Cade Otton, Luke Musgrave, and Taysom Hill. Now for our bonus flex player of the week, who is a riser, it can be a running back, a wide receiver, or a tight end. One Seattle Seahawk wide receiver finished within the top 23 at wide receiver in week 9, and the players' names were not DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. That's right, the rookie wide receiver JSN topped all Seahawk receivers in week 9 versus the Ravens. JSN is facing the Commanders in week 10, who are no strangers to letting a wide receiver or two go off on a weekly basis. When DK or Lockett miss a game, JSN is a lock for a good week, but now even when they both play and he's still doing damage, if he's available in your league, which he is in a few of mine, grab him and start him in week 10. Now, if you want more fantasy football content from Rival Fantasy Sports, then subscribe to this channel now for more content, including our weekly Start Sit Advice show that live streams every Sunday at 11:30 a.m. EST. You can also follow us on social to get the latest app updates, promos, and latest fantasy football news at Rival Fantasy on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. And then, of course, and most importantly, visit rivalfantasy.com or download the app today. Rival Fantasy, your one-stop shop for all your fantasy needs. As always, guys, thank you again for watching. Subscribe, like the video, and I'll catch you on the next episode.